The ordinary detective Wen Wen, who felt mentally ill, woke up from the mental hospital and found that his right hand was connected to a mysterious space called disaster. He could capture monsters into this space and acquire their abilities. Capture vampires and gain super-sensory and hypnotic abilities. Capturing vengeful souls allows for invisibility and wall penetration. Capturing curly-haired chimpanzees will immediately reduce their intelligence in order to gain more and stronger abilities. When one began to try to capture monsters, and thus entered the mysterious world of superpowers, seeing the truth hidden under the curtain of reality. PS1. Inspired by the Kesselu mythology in the Foundation, the style is humorous and interesting, and the number of words has become fat, updated and stable. Welcome to watch. PS2. Reader Group 7333477273. There aren't many people in the group. Interested friends can come in and play. Keywords of the novel. No pop-ups in disaster shelters. Download the complete TXT collection of disaster shelters, and read the latest chapters of disaster shelters. Chapter 1. The People Who Catch Vampires. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. The People Who Catch Vampires. Dida. This is the sound of blood dripping from the air, and in the pitch-black room with all the windows covered, a young woman is hanging upside down on the beam. There is a small wound on the neck that appears pale due to excessive blood loss, and thick blood that is about to solidify drop by drop along the wound, falling into the cleaned paint bucket below. Her expression was filled with fear, with a face full of grievances and fear, very pitiful. A tall and thin man wearing a white coat with a neurotic smile on his lips stood next to her, holding a sharp ox horn knife in his hand, trembling slightly. Of course, he doesn't have Parkinson's disease, he's just a little excited. Please let me go, please, the woman pleaded weakly. There's still strength to speak. No, it's too dangerous. The man stabbed the woman in the stomach, causing her to roll her eyes. The woman's expression became resentful, with 4 sharp teeth protruding from her mouth, struggling fiercely like a salted fish hanging on a rope ready to air dry. I want to kill you, I must kill you. I want to drain your blood, not just you, but also your family. I won't let go of anyone you know. Originally, the woman bound was the monster, a vampire active in various fantasy works, and that tall and thin man with a very antagonistic temperament, named Wen Wen, was an ordinary person. At least biologically speaking, it is an ordinary human. Wen Wen trembled for a moment. He was startled by the female vampire, so he took out a spray can and sprayed her with holy water. Holy water poured on her body, like pouring on a soldering iron, making a growling sound and emitting a burst of white air. This could make her weaker, but it could not cause substantial harm. Well, it should be safe now, after all, I'm very fragile. Wen Wen took a deep breath. Even for him, catching a vampire was too thrilling. You're just a devil, said the female vampire, who was made powerless by holy water. No, I'm not the devil, you are, Wen Wen corrected seriously. After confirming that the female vampire had no resistance, Wen Wen rolled up her right sleeve, closed her eyes, and a muddy black substance precipitated from the pores of her arm, forming a pair of pure black gloves. The gloves are very long, extending all the way to the elbows, like women's gloves, with 5 golden rings on each of the 5 fingers, and a larger golden metal ring on the wrist. Are you a superpower? The female vampire widened her eyes and looked at the black gloves. Wen Wen shook his head and then nodded again, saying, maybe it is. Then you're such a trash. As a superpower, you have to use such despicable means to deal with a beginner vampire like me, the female vampire sneered. What you said makes sense. Wen Wen nodded and said yes, then grinned and stuffed a head of garlic into the female vampire's mouth. A month ago, Wen Wen felt that he had some mental health issues, so he was recommended by others and found a reputable private mental hospital. The treatment process went smoothly until one session of hypnotherapy. After being hypnotized and waking up, Wen Wen found that the entire mental hospital was empty, leaving him alone, and he had established a connection with a mysterious space. That space is a huge prison called the disaster shelter. Wen Wen's consciousness can enter that space and wander in the first layer of that space, but that is meaningless because there is nothing inside. To make that space useful, at least one prisoner needs to be imprisoned inside. Well, Wen Wen doesn't know how he knows, but he just knows. He has tried wild dogs that bite people indiscriminately, drunkards fighting on the streets, and even murderers in prison, but the disaster shelter is not interested in those. It is obvious that only supernatural organisms can trigger a response in this space. Fortunately, Wen Wen is not entirely an ordinary person. Due to work reasons, he has encountered some similar things and knows that the world is not as simple as it appears on the surface. Previously, he had to shy away from such things, but now he has to take the initiative to hunt such things. And his first goal is the female vampire in front of him. Capturing a vampire is not easy, but it is not as difficult as Wen Wen imagined. Even if he is just a human without superpowers, as long as he finds the right method, there is still a way to deal with these monsters. He ran to a church, stole a few barrels of holy water and some blessed crosses, and even prepared some folk legends that were effective for vampires himself. Then a trap was set up in a place rumored to be haunted by vampires, and after squatting for a few days, the vampire was finally caught. After catching the vampire, he didn't let his guard down and kept bleeding her, weakening her with holy water. Even if the blood is drained, the vampire will not die, but blood is the source of strength for the vampire. As long as she keeps bleeding, she has no strength to resist. Wen Wen must be careful and vigilant. After all, even an extremely weak vampire can easily kill him. Now he has completely controlled this vampire, and the next step is to put her in custody. Wen Wen aimed his gloves at the female vampire, trying to guide the power of the disaster shelter. The disaster shelter does not have a user manual, but it is not difficult to control. Wen Wen just tried to extend the power of the shelter, and a force spread out from the gloves and landed on this vampire. This should have happened after scanning her and confirming that she had no resistance. A few black chains poked their heads out of his gloves, slowly and terrifyingly binding the vampire and dragging it towards his heart. The female vampire's body twisted eerily and sank into Wen Wen's palm. But when it was halfway absorbed, it got stuck. When Wen Wen bound the female vampire before, the rope hanging on the beam was straight, which made it impossible to suck the female vampire in. Wen Wen said silently, "I can't even handle a rope. It's really useless. If I hadn't weakened her and rashly absorbed her, I'm afraid something might have happened." With a long sigh, Wen Wen held onto the female vampire's buttocks and two long legs, struggled to cut the rope, and finally fully absorbed the female vampire. Next, let's take a look at all the changes in this disaster shelter. Before Wen Wen could wipe his sweat, a cold and emotionless electronic sound echoed in his mind, and he disappeared into place. Detected criminal, low-level vampire has been detained in cell number 00001 of the disaster shelter. Disaster area has been activated. In turn Wen Wen obtained permission to enter the detention center, obtained the position of disaster relief officer. Please collect your documents and supporting equipment at the disaster area center. The new book has been released, and there are millions of words to complete the old book. I also want to cheer for this book. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. I am behind you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. I am behind you. When Wen Wen opened his eyes again, he found himself in the disaster shelter. From a conscious perspective, it feels completely different to be here with oneself. A solemn, and oppressive atmosphere permeates the entire space. There is a thick layer of dust on the ground. It seems that no one has been here for a long time. What's this place? Let me out. The voice of the female vampire came from the side, and Wen Wen turned her head to see that she was being locked in a 5-meter square metal cage with the number disaster 0001. Wen Wen smiled and said to the female vampire, "I'm not quite sure where this is, but you can't think of getting out of here." Then he ignored the female vampire's endless curses, stopped in front of the cell, and walked towards the interior of the shelter. He remembered that the voice asked him to go to the central area to collect some things. For those things, Wen Wen actually doesn't care much. What he cares more about is what this disaster shelter is and why he was chosen. If he doesn't figure it out, he can't even sleep soundly. The reason why he's risking so much to hunt vampires is also because he wants to figure out the reason behind the situation. The first floor of this shelter, also known as the disaster area, is very large, with various types of cells and equipment that he doesn't know. Quickly, he walked to the center of the disaster area and saw the dot called Disaster Center. The center is blocked by a huge metal door, and Wen Wen had not entered the metal door before when wandering with consciousness. When Wen Wen walked to the door, the metal door automatically opened, and upon entering, he found it to be a huge circular space. Facing Wen Wen is a silver-white sphere composed of countless small circular metal particles. Hiss. This should be the center, it doesn't look like federal technology. Seeing the constantly moving metal particles, Wen Wen couldn't help but open his mouth wide. Apart from in science fiction movies, he had never seen such a magical thing before. Welcome to the disaster shelter, Mr. Wen Wen, the 72,580th disaster shelter worker. The small metal particles transformed into a man in a suit and bowed to Wen Wen. Amazing, can you tell me what this disaster shelter is? Wen Wen raised his eyebrows and asked in surprise. The main task of disaster shelters is to identify threats, control threats, shelter threats, reduce the occurrence of disasters, detain supernatural things that pose a threat to the world, and maintain balance between the worlds, said the metal man honestly. Tisk, did you answer so decisively? Wen Wen squinted his eyes, thinking that he needed to rely on insinuation to pry out information from this guy's mouth. This message is within the jurisdiction of the disaster shelter officer, the metal man replied. Since that's the case, if there's anything you can tell me, just tell me in detail. I inexplicably became a disaster shelter worker and still don't understand anything. Wen Wen found a clean place to sit down and raised his doubts to the metal man one by one. After about an hour, Wen Wen stood up from the ground and knew almost everything he needed to know. This metal man is not a living creature, but the management center of the shelter, so the conversation with him is more like searching for information on a computer. Many things that Wen Wen wants to know are impossible to know due to insufficient permissions, such as why he was suddenly able to contact this space, and now he is still unclear. But he still had some gains, as the metal man said, this is a place where supernatural things exist. I don't know how many years ago, this space completely ceased to operate until Wen Wen caught a vampire, and the space began to operate again. Disaster shelter workers are the most grassroots employees of the shelter, mainly responsible for capturing and dealing with supernatural creatures wandering around the world. If the shelter is still operating normally, then Wen Wen would be a low-level employee who fights against danger all day, and now he is the highest authority human in the entire shelter. After confirming the situation, Wen Wen received a suitcase from the metal man, which contained a badge and a complete set of black windbreakers. This was all the equipment for the disaster shelter officer. The material of the black windbreaker is very special, at least Wen Wen has not seen it on the market, so it should be able to sell for a lot of money. As for the badge, it is a silver pentagram metal plate the size of a duck egg, with a thin silver white metal chain on it, which looks like it should be hanging around the neck. The black windbreaker. This badge. Together with my gloves, it's perfect, Wen Wen roast. You have collected all your items. Please try your best to catch more monsters and restore the glory of the disaster shelter as soon as possible, the metal man said to Wen Wen. It depends on whether I think about it or not. Wen Wen waved his hand at the metal man and wandered around the central area. Behind Wen Wen, the metal man's face showed a look of disappointment. It's like a small city here. The rooms used to be inhabited by people, but now they're just empty buildings, inexplicably making Wen Wen feel desolate. As he walked, he walked out of the range of the building and saw a spectacular scene, a huge group of tombstones. This is the cemetery of disaster relief workers. Under each tombstone is recorded the merits of this interned Anxiazzi, captured 27 monsters, housed 48 dangerous items, and saved over 100 people. William Aaron, captured 74 monsters, housed 25 dangerous items, and saved Grey Soil Town from the crisis of destruction. Every time you focus on a tombstone, Wen Wen's mind will automatically conjure up some glimpses of the owner's life. These flickering shadows seem to be telling touching stories one by one, and the tragic emotions hidden in the stories have inevitably influenced Wen Wen's heart. The tens of thousands of tombstones standing in front of him represent tens of thousands of people who sacrificed themselves to save others. Even someone like Wen Wen, who is somewhat indifferent, cannot become indifferent at this moment. Has the environment here had an impact on my mood? But it's okay, it's worth moving him here. Wen Wen let out a light sigh, feeling more emotional in his heart. Just like facing the sacrifice of a firefighting hero, ordinary people see it in the news. Emotional people, who are sad for a while, no longer pay attention, while those who are more indifferent will only consider it as news. But if one truly stands on top of a funeral, even a heartless person cannot remain indifferent. These tens of thousands of tombstones create a substantial and almost supernatural atmosphere of extreme sadness and solemnity. As long as one stands among them, they will be affected, and Wen Wen is no exception. He walked forward step by step, and when he reached the innermost part, he saw a somewhat rudimentary tombstone. There were no flickering shadows on the tombstone, and in front of it was an empty coffin covered in dust. There is no body here because no one is collecting it for him. The words on the tombstone moved Wen Wen a little. It says, "This is my tombstone. My name is Jing Du, and I am the last in turn. I am already 78 years old this year, and my last old friend passed away 17 years ago to this day. I have captured 124 monsters and housed 54 dangerous items. I can feel the passing of life, and time should be running out. No one can erect a tombstone for me, so I will erect one for myself. Facing monsters and dangers, I have never been afraid. But when I was the only one left, I was really scared. I don't want to be the last one." After reading it, Wen Wen sighed lightly. "Since you don't want to be the last one, let's help you fulfill this wish. It's just a matter of doing it casually." Wen Wen hates uncontrollable things and also strongly resists this disaster shelter, but when he sees the words on this tombstone, he really can't bear it. He first bowed to the tombstone, then found a wooden board and inserted it next to it, writing his name on it. "At least for now, you're not the last one." End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Ability of Gloves. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Ability of Gloves. After reading the tombstone, Wen Wen felt a bit heavy and did not stay in the disaster shelter anymore. He appeared again in the room where the vampire was previously imprisoned. Looking at the silver suitcase in his hand, Wen Wen sighed. Am I different from an ordinary disaster shelter worker because of that pair of gloves? Ordinary disaster shelter workers are unable to enter and exit the disaster shelter at will and require specific rituals or channels to enter, while Wen Wen can enter at any time as long as he has this idea. Wen Wen realized that the gloves had also undergone changes. On top of the 5 metal rings and the metal wristband, a small light curtain appeared, allowing him to manipulate things within this light curtain. Wen Wen first looked at the wrist ring, and there was only one option on it, which was Disaster 0001. It was not just the wrist ring, but also the only option for other parts. So Wen Wen clicked on the wrist ring as confirmation, and at the moment of clicking, his body underwent a change. At the same time, inside the disaster shelter, the doorplate of the Disaster 0001 cell flashed with a golden luster that was a wonderful experience, with a tingling sensation spreading from the inside of the body to the outside. Wen Wen could feel that every part of his body was undergoing changes. The changes are intense, but not painful. Instead, they are very comfortable, with a strange sense of pleasure. After this change stopped, Wen Wen felt that she had become different. His vision became sharper, his body became stronger, and he could even hear the sound of his own blood flowing. Just like he turned into a vampire. Is it possible to have the ability of a creature within a prison number by selecting a prison number on the wristband? This is a foul-like feature. In order to confirm his abilities, Wen Wen conducted further tests. Firstly, the golden wristband on the wrist will possess most of the basic abilities of the imprisoned creatures in the prison, such as physical strength, recovery ability, sharp teeth and claws, once the prison is selected. The golden ring above the finger can select a specific extraordinary ability of the creatures in the prison, such as this female vampire, which has only one option, which is basic hypnosis. Until now, Wen Wen finally realized that female vampires have the ability to hypnotize. Thinking about it, he felt a bit scared. Fortunately, he did not give the female vampire any chance to resist. Whether it's a wristband or a ring, a prison can only be selected once, so Wen Wen has only two choices. Choose the basic ability of this female vampire, or the basic hypnosis effect that is unknown. So Wen Wen did not hesitate to choose the basic abilities of a female vampire. Compared to the less flashy basic hypnosis, Wen Wen prefers the ability to be more non-human. When he fully confirmed the ability of the gloves, the sun had already risen, warm sunlight shining through the gaps in the window, and dust was clearly visible. Seeing these sunshine, Wen Wen instinctively felt a little scared. He should now have the physique of a vampire, so would he also be afraid of the sunshine like a vampire? It's better to give it a try, I hope it doesn't hurt too much. Wen Wen grumbled a few times, carefully reaching out his hand to the sunlight, and then quickly retracting it. There seems to be no problem. After multiple confirmations, Wen Wen confirmed that his body is not afraid of sunlight, but he feels slightly uncomfortable when exposed to sunlight, and he is unsure if it is a psychological effect or something. Moreover, Wen Wen does not have the fangs of a vampire. Obviously, he is not like a vampire and needs to rely on blood to maintain his life. He has also tried things like holy water on himself, all of which were ineffective. Finally, Wen Wen confirmed that he does not have the weaknesses that vampires have. But there must be gains and losses. Without those weak points of warmth, the basic abilities of the body are not as strong as that female vampire. It took him too much time to determine his own state, and due to professional reasons, he was very cautious in this regard. I'm not an ordinary person anymore. Wen Wen's slender eyes narrowed, as if they could emit a bright light. His fingers tapped his chin, resembling a villain planning an evil plan. With superpowers, if you don't show them off, you always feel like something's missing. I can't find people I used to know. I'm not strong enough and I can't expose them now. Moreover, if there are monsters, there will be people who can clean them up. I don't want to be cleaned up by them too. Pop. Wen Wen patted his hand and couldn't show off. Go find those monsters. Although he didn't intend to fulfill his duty as a disaster shelter officer and didn't want to take on any responsibility, his gloves required at least 6 monsters to have full abilities, and now he only has 1 monster. So, for the sake of justice and peace, he needs to find other monsters and improve his abilities. After the plan was made, Wen Wen was slightly excited and rolled up his sleeves, cleaning up the traces left by himself and the female vampire in this room last night, and then left. On the street, Wen Wen wants to jump when walking. No matter how abnormal their brain is, they will be excited when they first acquire abilities beyond those of normal people. Returning to a nearby hotel, Wen Wen opened his computer and began searching for information. He usually stays in a hotel, but due to work reasons, he cannot settle down in one place, and he also has no home at this point. It's time to briefly introduce Wen Wen. His first half of life was like most ordinary people. Normal reading, normal college entrance examination, normal college education, and nothing unusual. But after 2 years in college, he dropped out because he was bored. He can clearly see his future life, without any variables, ordinary and unremarkable. So, he went to get a detective's license on his own and became a legitimate detective. That's right, a legitimate detective. In the Earth Federation, detectives have their own industry associations and can only become detectives by passing formal assessments. But the profession of detective itself is not favored by many people. However, Wen Wen did not care about these things. After becoming a detective, he found a long-lost sense of excitement. The feeling of solving cases and arresting criminals cannot be found in ordinary life. However, gradually, ordinary cases could no longer satisfy him. At this point, he did not continue to seek new stimuli, but felt that he might have mental problems and went to a private mental hospital. Afterwards, he inexplicably connected to the disaster shelter, and his life underwent tremendous changes. This supernatural encounter left him in a state of excitement and doubt for a long time. In order to solve his doubts, he made a decision that normal people would not make and went hunting monsters. And, he succeeded. Now, he is planning to search for the second monster. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. New Goals. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4. New Goals. Detectives have their own website where they share strange cases they encounter. Most cases are very popular among detectives, who will strive to contribute their wisdom and contribute to solving mystery cases. But there is a type of case that the vast majority of detectives are reluctant to touch, and even has formed a hidden rule in the industry that they will not even bring up. That is the case related to supernatural things, which is called internal case on the website and is sealed at the bottom of the website, making it easy to not search for it. The previous vampire was selected by Wen Wen among a bunch of cases, which was a relatively easy target to target. And his next task is to find another good case to enrich his superpowers. Renting the house, Wen Wen kept flipping the mouse and his eyes quickly scanned. It seems very nice here. At 10 o'clock in the evening, moonlight cannot penetrate the cloudy sky, and the mist of the night envelopes the entire city. From the outside, there is a faint orange light in the dormitory at the end of the second floor of Wen Wen Middle School and the second dormitory building. Now that the school has turned off the lights, it is reasonable to say that all the students should be sleeping now, so this dormitory should not be still lit. In the dormitory, 3 students sit together playing cards, with candles placed between them. Bomb! I won! A chubby student clenched his fist and shouted loudly. A thin and black student next to him was startled and quickly covered his mouth. Panda Peng, speak quietly. Do you want to call that old man over? Upon hearing the words, old man, the chubby Panda Peng quickly closed his mouth. In their eyes, the dormitory manager of this building was a terrifying person who always appeared and disappeared, and was very fierce and ruthless in his actions. Afterwards, the 3 students deliberately lowered their voices and continued playing cards. Although they were afraid of the gatekeeper, they still had to continue playing cards. They were only 13 or 14 years old, which was the age when they enjoyed playing. As soon as they had a good time playing, they forgot the time and it was soon midnight. They were very lucky and had not been noticed by the dormitory manager yet. Alright, stop playing. I have to wake up early for class tomorrow morning, said Li Xiaoyang, a skinny student who yawned and stood up, intending to go to the restroom. As soon as he opened the door, he saw an old man with wrinkles on his face, standing at the door with a pale face, his eyes fixed on him, and his urge to pee immediately disappeared. It is the dormitory manager of this dormitory building. Li Xiaoyang awkwardly smiled and then closed the dormitory door. To his surprise, the dormitory manager watched him close the door without stopping him, not even blinking his eyes. He walked back with a strange expression on his face, wanting to describe the situation outside to his roommates. But he found that his roommates were looking at him with a frightened expression on their faces. Strange, how do you know that the dormitory manager is right outside our dormitory? Li Xiaoyang said in surprise. But soon, he realized that they were not afraid of the dormitory master. Two slightly blackened palms rested on Li Xiaoyang's shoulders, and a head without eyeballs stretched out from his side, looking at him expressionlessly. Originally, what they were afraid of was this figure. An unusual cold and uncontrollable fear struck Li Xiaoyang's heart. Compared to the guy behind him, the dormitory manager had become more amiable. Cut. At the train station, Wen Wen, carrying a huge suitcase, couldn't help but sneeze. The smell in the air was too complex, and he couldn't bear it for a moment. After possessing the basic abilities of a vampire, his sense of smell greatly improves, like a dog's nose, which can distinguish various flavors. He could smell the smell of sweat, fox odor, and even the smell of spoiled underwear very clearly. This is Furong City, a big city with a population of several million. It seems that I need to stay here for a while. As a large city, Furong City has many abnormal cases that are usually unknown to the public. Wen Wen learned through insiders of detective websites that Furong City is the city with the highest number of incidents in the vicinity. And he needs to solve these cases one by one. After all, capturing monsters is a mandatory requirement for disaster shelters. Only by catching more monsters can he unlock more abilities in the shelters. I found a clean hotel to stay in, and Wen Wen opened his laptop. He has solved many difficult and complicated cases before, and he has received a lot of bonuses from various police stations, so he will not be short of money at all. To be safe, let's first try a simple event and let me see. After searching, Wen Wen locked in a case. Shocked. 3 middle school students were playing cards in the middle of the night when a major accident occurred. The reason was so simple. It's this kind of title again. It's not very nutritious at first glance. But I can't help but click on it. Wen Wen roast while browsing the contents of the case. Well, these 3 middle school students were all scared into the hospital afterwards. One of them suffered from frostbite and went insane directly. The dormitory manager stood at the door all night, his legs were almost paralyzed, and he was also recuperating in the hospital. Wen Wen touched his chin and muttered to himself, "This does look like a supernatural case, and it doesn't seem very dangerous. Even ordinary people haven't died, so I shouldn't have any problems now." Then, Wen Wen searched online for some information related to this case, but found nothing, which further confirmed his idea. Generally speaking, real supernatural cases cannot be found on ordinary public platforms. The bizarre and sensational events circulating online are either too big to cover up or manipulated by someone, and have no meaning for Wen Wen. This case cannot be searched online, which further indicates that it is the type he is interested in. Then, Wen Wen called his friend at the police station and asked for some internal information. After reading it, he made up his mind. Great, this is the first inside case handled by Detective Wen Wen. Maybe it's the second one, forget it. The next day at noon, the doorbell rang outside Panda Peng's house. A haggard middle-aged woman wearing a cashmere sweater pushed open the door and was stunned when she saw the person standing outside. "May I ask if you have anything to do?" "Hello, I am an insurance verifier from the Federal Waguduo Insurance Company. I heard that your son was frightened in the school dormitory a few days ago. I am here to discuss the specific matters of insurance claims." Wearing a cheap black suit and a pair of black-framed glasses, Wen Wen politely said with a briefcase in hand. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Preparation and Infiltration. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Preparation and Infiltration, Federal Waguduo Insurance Company. "I don't remember we bought your family's insurance," the middle-aged woman said suspiciously. Wen Wen pushed his glasses and handed over a document with a smile, saying, "You haven't bought it before, but Levyuan Middle School has bought it before. All students who have had accidents at Levyuan Middle School will be compensated if it is ultimately proven that the school is responsible." This document was randomly printed by Wen Wen at a roadside photocopy shop, and the seal was carved by him with a carrot. As a detective, he always has some strange skills. After reading the document, the woman entered the room with a gentle expression, and he finally saw Pandapang, a second-year junior high school student who was the first to experience the case. Pandapang sat on the sofa with a cup of hot tea in front of him, wrapped in a thick blanket, but he still trembled slightly. "Mr. Pandapang, could you please tell me what happened to you in the dormitory of Wen Wen Middle School?" Dormitory. Pandapang shook his head and said, "That night, the three of us went to play near the school's cold storage and accidentally got locked in it for a few hours." "Is that all? Nothing else special happened?" Wen Wen leaned forward and couldn't help but ask. What Pandapang said is completely inconsistent with the various materials he has received. Why, isn't that enough? Do you still have human nature? It's so pitiful that children are locked up in cold storage. Do you have any sympathy? Wen Wen's words angered Pandapang's mother, and she angrily questioned. No, that's not what I meant. I just wanted to ask, besides the cold storage, has anything happened in the dormitory? Is your current appearance really caused by the cold storage? Wen Wen frowned and asked. It's not a cold storage, what else can freeze a child like this? Pan's mother hugged Pandapang's shoulder and said to Wen Wen with a cold expression. Wen Wen's words are like saying that her child's current appearance is not serious at all. She suspected that Wen Wen deliberately asked Pandapang this way to avoid paying insurance premiums, and she was already a hot-tempered person, so naturally she didn't have a good face towards Wen Wen. Wen Wen asked some more questions and was eventually kicked out by Pan's mother. In Pan's mother's view, the facts were clear enough, but Wen Wen was always insinuating something else, which made Pan's mother, who had become somewhat irritable due to Pandapang's situation, unable to bear it. Coming out of Pandapang's house, Wen Wen did not feel any displeasure due to Pan's mother's attitude. When he was a detective, he also encountered this kind of thing frequently. He had long been accustomed to it. But why did Pandapang hide what happened in the dormitory? If it were his acting skills, he would have performed too well. I didn't even notice any signs of lying, murmured Wen Wen. Immediately after, he went to find another student, as well as Li Wenliang, who is still living in the hospital. The answer he received from these two people was consistent, just like what Pandapang said. It was all three of them who accidentally went to the cold storage in the school cafeteria and got frostbite. But according to Wen Wen's investigation, the cold storage in the school cafeteria is not something that the three students can go to. So, either all the internal information found in Wen Wen is fake, or these three students are lying together. No, maybe neither side made a mistake and it's not certain. Returning to the hotel, Wen Wen began further investigation to uncover the true identity of the thing that was causing trouble in the dormitory. As a detective who has recently debuted but achieved remarkable results, Wen Wen easily obtained some internal information. In one of the documents, Wen Wen almost confirmed the identity of the things in the dormitory. 3 years ago, a boy named Qin Shuang was flirting with girls online. Puff started dating at such a young age. What a child now. Wen Wen shook his head and brain. He made an appointment with a young woman and went to have a room with her, only to be caught by her boyfriend. Then, he was dismembered by the man and woman and stuffed into the refrigerator. The case was not solved until a year later because the man and woman surrendered themselves. Online dating carries risks, Wen Wen sighed. So, this Qin Shuang should have become a ghost and returned to his original dormitory, while Pandapang and the others were unlucky victims of the accident. This part went smoothly, and if it weren't for feeling exhausted during home visits, Wen Wen would definitely have a sense of achievement now. What I should deal with is a ghost. Shelter, how should I deal with ghosts? The disaster shelter has not responded at all. Hey, this cheat is like a muggy gourd. I have to guess what functions it has. Unlike other people's systems, it can still chat with the host, Wen Wen complained. Of course, at most he just complains. According to his personality, if this thing really has its own intelligence, he may have countless terrifying possibilities in his mind, such as taking possession or using his body to have some conspiracy. His biggest help is still the internet, and through various channels, he has found many seemingly reliable methods of catching ghosts and dirt. Well, the most reliable way is to learn Taoism, but unfortunately he doesn't have this path. Cow tears, tongue blood, child urine, salt, weapons with evil energy, as well as the quotes and crosses of the Creator God stolen from the church. He really stole a lot of things from the church to deal with vampires back then. He is not sure if these things can really deal with ghosts, but they should have some effect. After all, this is how he operates when dealing with vampires. At 9 o'clock in the evening, it was completely dark, and the weather was the same as the day when the accident occurred. After Wen Wen was fully armed, he walked out of the hotel with a big bag on his back and a mask on his face, which didn't seem like a good person at first glance. When he arrived at Wen Middle School, the school dormitories had all turned off, which was perfect for him to sneak in. He didn't walk through the main entrance. His attire was so strange that the security guard could let him in. Walk to the wall, hold on to the top of the wall, and jump over with a slight force. The physical fitness of a vampire is really amazing. It's amazing that I can catch a vampire. After a little bit of narcissism, Wen Wen found the second dormitory building and lay at the door, taking a glance. He saw a young security guard sitting upright in the dormitory manager's room. This is a bit troublesome, we need to get rid of him. The trouble Wen Wen mentioned is not that he can't get in with this security guard, but that when he deals with that ghost, there may be chaos, and many places are difficult to operate with this security guard. He clicked on the wristband, removed the prison of disaster 0001, and then moved it onto his middle finger. Wen Wen's body quickly weakened and became normal, but his eyes turned slightly red. He now feels like he can use his eyes to manipulate others. He carefully pushed open the door, and although he lacked the physical fitness of a vampire, he still easily touched the back of the guard. Detective, it's normal to know some sneaky tricks. When he was ready, Wen Wen snapped his fingers at the guard, who was immediately drawn to his attention and turned his head, right in front of Wen Wen's eyes. A pair of slender eyes that seemed to contain many mysteries. The security guard immediately got lost. You haven't seen me. And tonight, no matter what you hear or see, you can't go to the second floor, do you understand? The security guard nodded in confusion and sat motionless in the chair, as if he had not seen Wen Wen. Wen Wen breathed a sigh of relief. It seemed that the basic hypnosis had taken effect. If it didn't work, he would have to knock out this security guard. When activating the ability on the ring, you need to snap your fingers. Fortunately, as long as you wear this pair of gloves and make a snap action, it will make a sound. You don't have to worry about not being able to activate the ability because you won't snap your fingers. Because many readers roast, they added a setting at the end of the chapter. This setting was actually there, but I felt it was superfluous before, so I didn't write it. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Ghost Hunt. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Ghost Hunt. The dormitory at midnight was a bit eerie, quiet. Wen Wen walked in the corridor, his footsteps echoing. The entrance to the second floor was locked by an iron door, and the entire corridor was pitch black with no lights turned on. After the last incident, the second floor was sealed off and no longer inhabited. It is estimated that it will not open until the matter is completely resolved. Wen Wen sat in front of the entrance on the second floor and waited for a while, then switched the disaster 0001 prison to the wrist ring, and regained the power and speed of the vampire. This glove requires a cooling time of about 10 minutes for each switch, so Wen Wen must be prepared in advance before the official start. Afterwards, Wen Wen took out 2 small iron bars and poked and grumbled at the lock core of the iron lock. In ghost movies, if you see such a scene and insist on going in, you won't be able to survive for half an episode. After speaking, the iron lock made a crisp sound, and the lock had already been opened. Detective, it's normal to know some tricks like sliding doors and prying locks. I should have charged the principal for the removal of spirits. After I dealt with it, this school has one less safety hazard. Well, let's consider this as a public welfare action. After opening the lock, Wen Wen took out a watermelon knife from his backpack and walked into the pitch-black corridor. This watermelon knife is a tool he collected when solving a case before, and the criminal also injured many people with this knife, which can be considered a murder weapon. In folk legend, ghosts are afraid of knives with heavy killing intent, so Wen Wen specially brought this knife over. In the pitch-black corridor, Wen Wen easily found the 225 bedroom where Pandapang and his companions had previously lived. Vampires also have excellent vision at night, so they don't need to turn on the lights and can move freely here. As soon as Wen Wen pushed open the door, he felt a cold and gloomy aura that made him cover his nose. The presence of this aura was too strong. I don't know if it's because the vampire's physique made him more sensitive, or if the ghosts inside are really so powerful. It's quite comfortable. The sudden cold breath not only did not scare Wen Wen, but almost made him moan. For him with a vampire constitution, this environment is even more comfortable than the sauna. However, even if she feels comfortable, she cannot be careless. When it comes to catching ghosts, Wen Wen is still a young lady who once gets on the sedan chair. Open the backpack, take out the pre-prepared items inside and place them on the ground. Then he first wiped some cow tears on his eyelids, carefully took out a small spray bottle, which contained fresh boy urine, and then sprinkled some salt on the door and body. Inside the door, a transparent ghost with a wooden expression watched Wen Wen busy there, feeling a little scared in his heart. Just like a child alone at home, looking through the cat's eye at an adult holding a murder weapon outside the door, ready to break in at any time. Under the gentle activity, the situation between humans and ghosts was reversed. The ghost's name was Qin Shuang during his lifetime, and he wandered aimlessly for 3 years after his death, ignorant and ignorant. A while ago, he was walking aimlessly near the school when he suddenly heard Pandapang and others discussing his story in a sarcastic tone. He suddenly broke free from that state. And it took several days to actually appear in this dormitory, attacking Pandapang and several others during the darkest night. At that time, his strength was not strong, otherwise he wouldn't have allowed Pandapang and his companions to return alive. But now, Qin Shuang is much more powerful than before. After successfully harming people, he transforms from a slightly stronger ghost to an evil spirit. But even Qin Shuang, who was transitioning towards evil spirits, looked at Wen Wen with an uncontrollable fear. The ghost's intuition allowed him to feel that Wen Wen was somewhat different from ordinary humans, and deep inside Wen Wen's body, there was a faint, extremely evil aura that made him tremble from the depths of his soul. After everything was ready, Wen Wen walked into the dormitory with a knife in his left hand and a urinal in his right hand. At first glance, he saw Qin Shuang's phantom. Cow tears seem really useful. Qin Shuang's age is similar to Pandapang's, with a thin layer of frost covering his spiritual body and multiple patchwork marks on his body, indicating that he was indeed dismembered during his lifetime. I can see you, aren't you ready to communicate? Wen Wen played with the watermelon knife with a malevolent aura and slowly approached Qin Shuang. Qin Shuang remained silent, just looking at Wen Wen. He had been a ghost for several years and was no longer very good at communicating with people. Moreover, he is actually attacking now. The temperature in this dormitory is even lower than inside the refrigerator, and ordinary people will freeze and lose their ability to resist in a short period of time. However, Wen Wen did not feel uncomfortable. Vampires already prefer cold environments. In fact, some vampire families like to raise ghosts in the castle to create a comfortable living environment. Realizing that the little ghost didn't welcome him, Wen Wen could only smirk a few times and then show a gentle smile, saying, "Actually, I'm here to save you. I know ghosts like you usually have hidden secrets. Tell me, I'll help you." Qin Shuang raised his eyebrows. Although he wouldn't let go of this human, he still wanted to confide in him and let him know what kind of injustice he had encountered. As soon as he spoke, he saw a snowy knife light slashing down his head. After a single blow, it wasn't enough. Wen Wen waved his arm and left a lingering shadow, causing Qin Shuangling's body to become somewhat blurry after being chopped. Yes, Wen Wen still started chopping people, no, chopping ghosts. Wen Wen has no intention of helping ghosts solve problems. He just wants to catch a monster, and whether the other party is happy or unhappy is not within his consideration. He has already regarded Qin Shuang as his own thing. After chopping for a while, Wen Wen stopped and Qin Shuang's spiritual body condensed again. His gaze at Wen Wen became even colder because of anger, and he was even stronger than before. Wen Wen twitched the corners of his mouth and then threw the watermelon knife directly onto the ground, his eyes curved in an arc, flattering Qin Shuang. Sure enough, most folk legends are unreliable. Is it still time for us to have a good discussion now? You die. Qin Shuang let out a sharp scream, causing Wen Wen to feel dizzy. Then, it turned into a black aura and rushed directly into Wen Wen's body. He does not intend to compete for control of Wen Wen's body. As an immature evil spirit, Qin Shuang does not have the ability to perform advanced operations such as possession. He just wants to freeze him from within Wen Wen's body. But he only paused for a moment before being bounced out, his eyes filled with shock as he looked at Wen Wen. In Wen Wen's body, he felt an indescribable fear, as if being targeted by a huge malicious force. Qin Shuang was still in shock, and a foul-smelling liquid sprayed all over him. He looked at the liquid on his body in confusion, feeling somewhat bewildered. Boy, urine doesn't have the expected killing effect on ghosts, but it's amazing to be able to touch ghosts. There's nothing to say, let's make a joke. As soon as the boy arrived at his girlfriend's house, he couldn't wait to kiss her. My girlfriend said, "No, my aunt is here." The boy felt very strange and said, "What's the relationship between kissing and his aunt?" So the boy forced a kiss on his girlfriend, and suddenly a woman rushed out of the kitchen. The woman pointed at the boy and cursed, "Why bully my niece?" End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Successful Capture. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Successful Capture. After trying to urinate with a child, Wen Wen threw the spray bottle on the ground. Unlike vampires, many legendary methods for dealing with ghosts are not very effective. However, after a simple confrontation just now, Wen Wen has basically confirmed that this little ghost has no way to deal with him, so he has relaxed a lot. Is this urine? Qin Shuang said in confusion, his voice hoarse and piercing, sounding like he was scraping the blackboard with his nails. Wen Wen nodded and said, "That's right, Chunyang boy urine. It was just made at night and shouldn't have gone bad yet. Just to clarify, this urine is not mine, it was bought by me with money from your classmate." Qin Shuang remained silent for a long time, feeling a bit speechless. Half a minute later, he said to Wen Wen, "You're a very strange guy. I admit I can't deal with you, but equally, you can't do anything to me. The toys you're holding won't hurt me." He disdainfully pointed to the pile of things prepared by Wen Wen and continued, "How about stopping here?" Wen Wen scratched his hair in distress and said, "There's nothing wrong with what you said. This time, I didn't consider it enough. You, a monster without substance, are quite difficult to deal with." Immediately after, the two fell into a eerie silence, one person and one ghost in silence. Frost had already piled up in the corner of the dormitory, and Qin Shuang stopped talking, but he was still trying to freeze Wen Wen. "Wait, I have one more move." Wen Wen's eyes lit up and he reached out his hand to Qin Shuang. The black gloves appeared, and the pitch-black chains spread out from the palm of his hand. The ominous aura emanating from the black chain made Qin Shuang's heart palpitate, but after looking at it for a while, he sneered. "Are you going to use this slow thing to catch me?" The chain released from the Wen Wen glove moves very slowly, even slower than the speed of a turtle. It is basically impossible to catch a ghost of a soul. It's indeed a bit difficult to catch you with this, but all the victims were injured in this room, and this is your original dormitory. During the battle with me, you never tried to escape, so I guess your range of action should be only this room. Although my chain is slow, as long as I wrap the entire room, I will naturally catch you. Wen Wen's face showed a grim smile. 15 minutes later, Qin Shuang was tied to the ground like Zongzi by a black chain. The black chain was very slow, and it took 15 minutes to spread to the whole dormitory. Now Qin Shuang has been caught by Wen Wen, but Wen Wen is not in a hurry to drag him into prison. You're a tough kid to deal with, but I'm even more powerful, after all, I'm a superpower haha. Wen Wen sat next to Qin Shuang, boasting wildly without feeling embarrassed at all. Let me tell you, I caught a female vampire before. She was very beautiful and sucked human blood. I didn't even show up and took her off. Is she amazing? Before catching ghosts, Wen Wen wanted to find a monster to show off and vent the excitement accumulated in the disaster shelter. Since losing consciousness in a mental hospital, he has too much to confide in, but these words he doesn't want others to know, so a ghost about to be sent to prison is the best object to confide in. As for why he didn't confide in front of that female vampire. He's so shy. Wen Wen confided everything to Qin Shuang, but Qin Shuang rolled his eyes as he listened. After speaking, he let out a long sigh of relief, as if he had unloaded a huge burden. Then Wen Wen extended his right hand and pinched Qin Shuang's face. I have looked at your profile, and at such a young age, you are learning from others. Halfway through, Wen Wen was stunned. He just touched Qin Shuang's face. He couldn't touch Qin Shuang no matter how much he attacked before, because the body of the ghost was illusory. After thinking for a while, he tried to touch Qin Shuang's face with his left hand, but still couldn't touch it. So the reason for being able to touch Qin Shuang is the evolution of black gloves in disaster shelters. After confirmation, Wen Wen's gaze towards Qin Shuang became unfriendly, and an excited light appeared in his slender eyes. At a young age, if you don't learn well, learn from others online dating, and even harm others after death, I will educate you for your mother. Wen Wen used his right hand to fiercely beat Qin Shuang, spanking, slapping, and even pulling his hair. What education he says is actually an excuse, he just wants to try the feeling of beating ghosts. After a while, Qin Shuang, with a blue nose and swollen face, wailed and said, Master, stop fighting and quickly recover your powers. Even if he becomes a ghost, he is essentially just a teenage kid. Wen Wen stopped, covering his face and trying not to make his expression too abnormal. Beating a ghost is really enjoyable. After calming down his emotions, Wen Wen tightened the chain, and Qin Shuang was dragged into the disaster shelter. Ha, it's great. Wen Wen casually tidied up his hair, his nose twitched slightly, and his entire expression collapsed. What kind of childish urine is on that little ghost? I even hit him with my bare hands. And, I even touched my face. After returning to the hotel, Wen Wen tightly closed the doors and windows and directly entered the disaster shelter. Qin Shuang's ghost was placed on the first floor of the shelter, next to Disaster 0001, in Disaster 0002 prison. The perimeter of this prison is still that kind of metal fence, and for a ghost who can pass through the wall, such a cell is undoubtedly in vain. But Qin Shuang remained so honest, looking listless and without any intention of escaping. Although the fence is the same, there is a huge golden rune on both the floor and ceiling, which is not found in the prison of the female vampire. He doesn't want to escape, but he can't escape. It seems that this disaster shelter will also be decorated differently due to the different things being held. This rune may have an effect on ghosts. Write it down and have a chance to experiment, Wen Wen muttered to himself. Once again, when a monster is locked in, the shelter still looks no different. It seems that for this shelter, there is no difference between one monster and two monsters. After seeing Wen Wen enter, the ghost Qin Shuang shrank in the corner, and the old punch he had given him before still lingered in his memory. Wen Wen pointed to the nearby cell and smiled, saying, "Don't be so scared. Let me tell you, there's a beautiful and gentle big sister next door." "Oh. Wow. I won't let you go." Halfway through his words, the female vampire rushed to the edge of the cell, roaring at Wen Wen. Her 4 sharp fangs made her look like a cannibal. Very fierce. Little ghost soul Qin Shuang has changed direction to hide again. "You too, don't be so excited. I'm afraid you might not be comfortable living here, so I found a fellow inmate for you," Wen Wen said with a smile. "Are you hunting monsters? Do you want to be a demon hunter? I'll tell you, no hunter has a good ending. I'm waiting for the day when you die tragically, hoping it won't be too far away." The female vampire suddenly quieted down and said to Wen Wen with resentment. Listening to the female vampire's malicious words, Wen Wen suddenly wanted to touch her head, feeling like she had an irritable pet. "I don't know if the monsters locked up in the cell will starve, but don't starve to death." They were finally caught. After confirming again that nothing unexpected happened, Wen Wen left the disaster shelter. On the first night of the wedding, the bride changed into a sexy nightgown and said to the groom, "You can do whatever you want tonight." The groom happily picked up the bride and placed it on the bed, taking out his phone. The bride thought he was trying to use a mobile app to find a nearby pharmacy, preparing to fight for 300 rounds. My face couldn't help but blush, and my heart started beating faster. Hello, as usual tonight, in the Dota section of the telecommunications industry, I'll go wild. Strolling meteors, leaving only one silhouette behind. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Ghost Abilities and Mutations. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Ghost Abilities and Mutations. At this moment, a young man and woman appeared in the 224 dormitory where Wen Wen had fought last night. The low temperature hasn't completely dissipated yet, it's just the hand that moved. The young man in a cowboy hat squatted on the ground, feeling the temperature with his hand and said, "Are they our people?" asked the girl with red hair, wearing hot pants and white stockings. "No, the assistant at the door should have been hypnotized, his memory is problematic," the cowboy shook his head and said. The cowboy man closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, his white eyes turned green. He scanned the room and sighed for a moment before his eyes returned to normal. "Did you find anything?" The girl covered her nose and sniffed, feeling a bit coquettish here. "The person last night was very cautious and didn't leave any traces, but the breath hasn't dissipated yet. I should be able to track him down. Moreover, from the perspective of breath, he should be a newly awakened superpower. I hope he won't be encountered by those lunatics first, otherwise it will be a trouble in the future." After coming out of the shelter, Wen Wen revealed his gloves and tapped on them. He wanted to test the basic abilities of ghosts and see if they were different from those of vampires. After choosing, his body underwent a strange transformation, with every cell undergoing changes, and then his clothes fell off. Wen Wen's whole body became illusory, but it was obvious that the disaster shelter did not endow clothes with the same ability. This is too shameful. Now Wen Wen is like a ghost, he can float in the air, not be seen by ordinary people, and can also pass through some things. But besides that, he has no other abilities. It seems that the frozen ability of the little ghost soul Qin Shuang belongs to the category of special abilities and is not included in his basic abilities. In this way, Wen Wen sat in the hotel room for about 10 minutes, waiting for the cooling time before switching back to his physical state. Even if others can't see, I don't want to take off my clothes and move around. Wen Wen scratched his head in distress. If he couldn't solve the problem of clothes disappearing when switching, the effect of ghost constitution would be largely wasted, at least for him. Ordinary clothing should not be able to withstand the impact of disaster shelters. So, what about clothes from disaster shelters? He opened the silver suitcase and changed into the black windbreaker, which fit well and set off his figure very well. It's so light. And it has little impact on the movements. In the future, you can consider wearing this outfit frequently. After changing into a windbreaker, Wen Wen tried to transform into a ghost form again. This time, only a lonely black underwear fell to the ground. The uniform in the shelter does not include underwear. Although it's chilly, it's much better than before. Let's go out and take a look. Wen Wen drove his body, concealing his figure and drifting out of the room, strolling through the entire hotel, experiencing the pleasure of becoming a transparent person. Teasing sensitive cats and dogs, blowing air conditioning behind a person's neck makes them goosebumps, and peeking into some privacy. Well, if he doesn't go to the women's bathhouse, he already has integrity. After experiencing it to his heart's content, he realized that the body of ghosts is not omnipotent and has many limitations. Firstly, there are many metals that he cannot penetrate, and in this state, apart from suddenly appearing frightening, there is no means to attack others. If he encounters someone who can touch the spiritual body, he is now just a target. So, although this posture is novel, it is still not as useful as the vampire posture, but it may come in handy in certain special occasions. He walked out of the hotel and looked at the sky. The originally blue sky had become gray, as if there were many blurry shadows floating in the air. In the corner of the street, you can vaguely see some illusory figures, whose faces are bewildered and wandering around. That should be an ordinary ghost, even if there is still some distance from the evil spirits. Qin Shuang is much stronger than these ordinary ghosts. It seems that this is the perspective of ghosts. It's different from what normal humans see. Ordinary ghosts walk on the ground, but what are those floating in the sky? Wen Wen squinted his eyes, trying to see the ethereal shadow floating in the air. With his efforts, the shadow became clearer and clearer. That is a monster with a human upper body, wings on its back, and a wriggling snake tail on its lower body. When Wen Wen saw the monster clearly, it suddenly turned its head to look at Wen Wen, with its green eyes emitting a terrifying madness. Not good. It caught its attention. Wen Wen quickly averted his gaze, but it was already too late. The two lines of sight aligned, forming a thin line made up of mist, and the monster flew rapidly towards Wen Wen along the thin line. Halfway through the flight, it suddenly stopped, as if squeezing in from an extremely narrow space. Now it is moving slowly, but with every step forward, its body becomes more real, no longer an illusory shadow, but like a real monster. Damn it, what shouldn't be seen should be seen less. Wen Wen let out a low curse, then quickly returned to his room and switched to vampire mode. Fortunately, in ghost mode, he spent a lot of time playing pranks, otherwise he would have been the prey of that guy now. In a ghostly state, he lacks combat ability and can only serve as bait for that monster. Now he returned to the room not to escape, but to get a weapon. With a watermelon knife in his left hand and a delicate revolver in his right hand. As a well-known and legitimate detective, Wen Wen has the qualification to hold a gun. Even if he shoots in the city, as long as he provides a reasonable explanation at the time, there will be no trouble. Wen Wen is not a good person in the traditional sense, and some of his actions may even be condemned by the public when they are made public. But at least, he doesn't have the habit of letting the trouble he brings affect others. And even if you have to run away and throw blame, you have to wait until you confirm that you can't solve it. Running to the rooftop of the hotel, Wen Wen stared at the monster slowly appearing in the real world, with mixed feelings in his heart. Unexpectedly, catching a new monster did not bring him any improvement, but instead caused him trouble first. I just glanced at you. Is it necessary to chase after you? And I hope those police can believe that I'm really fighting monsters. He aimed his pistol at the monster slowly infiltrating and decisively fired, pouring out all the bullets in his hand. The deafening gunfire caused a commotion around the hotel. Fortunately, it's midnight now and there are no pedestrians on the road, otherwise the situation would be even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. First Practical Battle. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 First Practical Battle. This monster is stuck there, moving slowly, making it the best time to attack. When it completely enters the real world, it will not be so easy to deal with. Who knows if it will dodge bullets? All the bullets penetrated the monster's body, shooting out a foul-smelling green blood, but the monster became even more violent, staring at Wen Wen as if it was about to tear off his flesh and blood. Well, I seem to have a lot of accuracy in my marksmanship, hitting everything from such a distance. But now, at least your target is fixed on me, right? Wen Wen put the gloves back into the gun bag, and the pitch-black gloves appeared. He held the watermelon knife with both hands and stared at the monster with a hint of excitement. Come on, if you talk about monsters, I'm also a monster now, who's afraid of who? Ah. The monster angrily agreed. The sound of this monster is very strange, like the call of a whale, extremely penetrating, making Wen Wen, who has a sensitive hearing, feel a bit uncomfortable. However, few residents around the hotel heard this sound, and a few heard a vague sound but dared not come out to check. In fact, even if they come out to inspect, it is difficult for them to see this monster. Apart from being clear in Wen Wen's eyes, the presence of this monster in the eyes of ordinary people is extremely low. After waiting for a while, the monster finally broke free from the invisible barrier, its wings flickering slightly behind it, and it landed crookedly on the rooftop. Its snake-like lower body twisted strangely, rapidly approaching Wen Wen. It has half a foot long, sharp fingers like sharp knives on its human-like arms, which look very intimidating. It was because its gaze intersected with Wen Wen that it had the opportunity to come to this world, and it was also shot by Wen Wen, so his first target was Wen Wen. Wen Wen's body leaned forward slightly, and his palm holding the watermelon knife was sweating. This was the first time he had faced this monster with a significant threat. He didn't show his face throughout the entire process of capturing the vampire, and the ghost Qin Shuang couldn't threaten him, but now this unknown monster can truly threaten his life. Without waiting for the monster to rush in front of him, Wen Wen sprinted up with just a little toe, so fast that ordinary people could only see remnants. Just glance at the monster's charge towards him, Wen Wen can conclude that this monster's speed is not as fast as him. Just as Wen Wen tests what he can do after acquiring ghost abilities, he also conducts comprehensive tests on himself after acquiring the basic abilities of a female vampire. What he lacks is just practical combat. Wen Wen's figure quickly swept over the monster, and the slender watermelon knife left a foot-long wound under its armpit. Green blood splashed out, falling to the ground with a growling sound. I'm much faster than it, I can win. A twisted smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, and his eyes began to engulf. Wen Wen was already very excited. If his opponent was not a monster, others would probably consider him a villain when they saw Wen Wen's appearance. That's what I've been looking for, excitement. Obtaining superpowers and capturing monsters all gave Wen Wen a sense of pleasure that he had never experienced before, but none of these were comparable to directly engaging in close combat with monsters. The monster's dark green eyes glanced at the wound, spat out its long tongue from its mouth, licked it on top, and the wound stopped bleeding. Then it roared and rushed towards Wen Wen, its sharp claws occasionally cutting the floor tiles apart. Can't you tell who's strong and who's weak? It's just a wild beast without wisdom. Even if you can heal your wounds, as long as I cut a few more. Wen Wen stood calmly in front of the monster, looking at the rushing monster with some anticipation, but suddenly he felt that the weight in his hand seemed to be incorrect. MMP, where's my knife? Just now, the watermelon knife that cut open the skin of this monster has only one handle left. This monster's blood has strong corrosiveness. At this moment, the monster had already rushed towards Wen Wen. Helpless, Wen Wen could only jump up high and directly use the handle of a knife to strike the monster's forehead. Even without weapons, in vampire mode, Wen Wen's power is stronger than that of top human boxers. Then, Wen Wen was knocked upside down by the monster's forehead, damaging the fence on the rooftop and falling down. Oh my old waist. Wen Wen stood up with his waist covered, feeling like he was about to fall apart. Even with the strong physique of a vampire, falling from a height of 4 floors was not easy. He gave the monster a resentful glance and transformed into a shadow, disappearing into the streets and alleys. Yes, Wen Wen has run away. He doesn't have a weapon in his hand, so he has no way to deal with this guy. The monster lost its gentle figure in its eyes, roared low into the sky, and then its chilling eyes began to scan around again, searching for new prey. There aren't so many fragile foods in that world. Due to the gunfire and roar just now, there were no pedestrians on the street, but there were residents in nearby buildings. Monsters were wandering around, searching for easy targets. Suddenly, a man and a woman stood in front of it. Damn it, my premonition is indeed correct. This newly emerged superpower is troublesome, attracting residents of the inner world so quickly. The man wearing a cowboy hat and leather boots frowned as he looked at the drooling monster, feeling a headache. And it also ran away. On the side, the red-haired girl wearing white stockings shrugged and said, "This monster is a resident of the inner world. If left alone, it will kill indiscriminately. Lin Lu, go and solve it." "Okay, Captain." The girl hopped up to the monster and looked up at it with a surprised expression. The monster, without thinking about it, directly scratched the girl with one paw. If this paw were solid, even the iron sheet could scratch through. But the girl just bent her knees and dodged with a light jump. Her speed didn't look as abnormal as Wen Wen, but her flexibility was superior. "Captain, this seems to be a new breed. You don't need to send it to the headquarters for research." The girl's legs seemed to be fitted with springs, chatting with the man while easily dodging the attack. "No need, this is a feathered snake monster. Its blood is highly corrosive and its intelligence is not high. I've told you many times that you need to read information regularly," sighed the cowboy man. "Hurry up and solve it. I also need to hurry up and find that newly emerged superpower, allowing a superpower who doesn't understand anything to move freely. It's too dangerous." "Yes, Captain." The girl stood at attention and said, then her slender legs suddenly became almost twice as thick, and clear muscle contours appeared on the white stockings. After her legs became thicker, the girl's speed increased dramatically. She kicked the feathered snake monster in the stomach, making a muffled sound like hitting a tire with a hammer. The feathered snake monster was kicked away, bending a lamp post on the roadside. The power of this kick is comparable to the impact of a heavy truck. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Hunter Association. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Hunter Association. When Wen Wen returned, the feathered snake monster was already lying on the road, with its joints misaligned and a large hole in the cement beneath its body, indicating the extent of violent treatment it had received. A slender girl with red hair was standing barefoot next to the feathered snake monster, which had dozens of shoe prints on its body. "Are you the one who attracted the feathered snake monster superpower?" The man in the cowboy hat looked surprised when he saw Wen Wen. He didn't expect Wen Wen to come back here. "So this monster is called the feathered snake monster. They refer to people with supernatural abilities as superhumans." "I don't understand what you're saying," Wen Wen said with a bewildered expression. "Since the monster has been solved, he can't afford to reveal his identity again. You don't have to pretend to be silly. It was you who brought it out, and it was you who captured that weak ghost at Green Source Middle School." "I remember your breath," the man said calmly as he looked at Wen Wen. The man spoke so clearly that even pretending to be silly and bland in a gentle manner would be meaningless. He sighed and pointed to the traces of fighting around him. "Don't you need to handle the scene? There was quite a commotion just now. We don't need to deal with this, there will be someone dedicated to handling it. Those who have witnessed supernatural events nearby will have their memories erased. Now I need to focus on handling your matter," the man said calmly. It turns out you guys did all these good things. When I said those damn junior high school students told me they went to the cold storage to freeze, that's not nonsense, is it? Wen Wen suddenly realized that he had been puzzled about this matter before. While browsing through the internal cases, he realized that there were so many supernatural cases. Although there are many supernatural cases, the number of witnesses is pitiful. Those who promise to see monsters are usually just hearsay followers. This has led to many supernatural events, which cannot be confirmed due to the lack of witnesses, ultimately becoming urban myths. Until now, in the minds of ordinary people, the Earth Federation is still a world without gods and ghosts. The man pressed his hat and introduced himself to Wen Wen, saying, Hunter Association, leader of the Furong River hunting team, Lin Jiyuan. The demon hunter in the Furong River region, Lin Lu, the pink-haired girl jumped up to Lin Jiyuan and said. And then there's the title, Wen Wen rubbed her hair and said, Detective Wen Wen. Lin Jiyuan and the others said, Wen Wen had no intention of running away. The fact that he possessed supernatural abilities had just been exposed, and his identity could not be considered too secretive. Under the premise of revealing his appearance, he cannot escape unless he gives up his identity by hiding his name. And Wen Wen does not intend to give up his identity. There is only one country in the world, the Earth Federation, and no foreign country to let him escape, so Wen Wen intends to cooperate with these two people. Come with us, we won't do anything to you, just let you know some basic things that a superpower should know. Don't be like today, causing trouble and only running away. Lin Lu picked Wen Wen with her eyes and said. To correct this, I'm not running away, I'm looking for weapons. Wen Wen lifted the windbreaker and tied a bunch of various knives inside, which can usually be seen on murderers. It turned out that he was just looking for weapons. His strength was not as strong as that monster, and its blood had a strong corrosiveness. Therefore, Wen Wen could only find as many weapons as possible to kill that monster. You clearly want to run away, your words are deceitful, Lin Lu sneered. Hiss. Wen Wen's slightly flushed eyes fixed on Lin Lu, scanning from bottom to top. From bare feet, to broken big white legs and stockings, to a flat airport that gaze made Lin Lu feel goosebumps, and she was scanned by her slender eyes, combined with the ominous aura emanating from Wen Wen's body, as if she had been targeted by a venomous snake. You demon hunters have a strong taste for playing. Retracting his gaze, Wen Wen gave Lin Jiyuan a look that even a man could understand, making Lin Lu's teeth itch with hatred. Returning to the hotel, Wen Wen picked up all his belongings and followed them to a van. After driving for about half an hour, they arrived at the 8th Mental Hospital in the western suburbs of Furong City. This hospital is not small in scale, but it looks very bleak, with piles of garbage faintly visible in the corners. Opening the iron door, Wen Wen followed Lin Jiyuan into the hospital. A mental hospital. You wouldn't be using me for an experiment, would you? 5 hospitals are like a wild chicken hospital, 8 hospitals. TSK. Due to the accident that occurred in that private mental hospital, Wen Wen had a bad feeling about the hospital. However, out of professional ethics, Wen Wen carefully observed the hospital. This is located in the western suburbs, but the transportation is very convenient, and the geographical environment is not very complex. There are not many people, so it is not easy to attract attention. So, the mental hospital should be a cover, this should be the headquarters of their demon hunters. However, even if they really plan to experiment with themselves, Wen Wen is not afraid, after all, he can enter the disaster shelter at any time. Speaking of which, how did you quickly find that monster? It just appeared not long ago, Wen Wen suddenly asked, following behind Lin Jiyuan. It's not about finding that monster, it's about finding you. If we find you earlier, the monster won't even appear, Lin Lu replied. It seems that I have been targeted by you for a long time. Wen Wen raised his eyebrows. When Leviuan Middle School caught Qin Shuang's ghost, he asked himself that he had already cleaned up all the traces unexpectedly, these two people still came to find him. That's because as long as you don't go too far, there's no one the captain can't find, Lin Lu said with her head held high, proud as if she had found Wen Wen. You said that the monster that found me earlier wouldn't even appear, why is that? Wen Wen asked in confusion, curious about the monster. How did it actually appear? In that foggy world, there were countless shadows like that. Why was it only that one who came to attack him? Lin Zhiyuan stopped, and Wen Wen also stopped. Before answering you, I would like to ask, have you ever been attacked by another monster before? No, Wen Wen shook his head and said, he was very certain because he had been attacking other monsters before. Why did the monster attack you? I can probably guess that you entered a world full of fog and tried to see it clearly, right? Lin Zhiyuan said in a positive tone. Wen Wen nodded. Indeed, it was only after he saw the feather snake monster clearly that it went crazy and wanted to attack him. Your inspiration is indeed very strong. You should have just awakened, and surprisingly, you were able to enter the mist layer, and even attracted monsters from the inner world. You are a good seedling, Lin Zhiyuan exclaimed. End of this chapter.